First up is a film called Nightbitch. It stars Amy Adams. It's directed by Mariel Heller, and it is based on the 2021 novel by Rachel Yoder. And once I heard the title, I was like, I'm in. And now having seen the film, I was like, hell yes, I am in. If you have any lived experience as a woman, if you have any women in your life in any capacity, especially mothers, everyone from a physical standpoint has a mother. That doesn't mean they are involved in your life, but just if you know women and if you know women who are mothers, I need you to see this movie. So Amy Adams plays an artist. She puts her career on pause to become a stay-at-home mom, and it is about her navigating that transition and, meeting other moms and just all the stresses of it. And there are some, very creative storytelling techniques. But I think what is actually the strongest thing about this story is that portrayal of a mother. I'm not one myself, but, of all the moms I know and everything like that, I was like, this feels very realistic and very candid in how it portrays motherhood. Because I think, and women in film especially, in media, have to be portrayed as these saintly characters who can do no wrong. And like it's so fulfilling to be a mom. But there are harsh realities to it. That doesn't mean that it's not a fulfilling thing. But I just love that this was a really graphic exploration of that. And then also, even if you don't have kids, and this is where it comes into the whole lived experience as a woman thing, it's just navigating the world as a woman and the things that you have to put up with. I was like, this part I connect to, personally, just existing in the world, trying to deal with your relationships with other women. Scoot McNairy plays Amy Adams' husband. Zoe Chow is in this. Mary Holland, Jessica Harper, and just, I loved this movie so much. I will say I saw it at TIFF, which I've caveated every film that I saw at TIFF because I was a little loopy there just because you see so many films in a day and it's just a surreal experience. But I remember being very clear-headed. It's like a middle of the day screening. And I was just like, hell yes, I am so into this movie. I know that there have been some naysayers and I know the title is a bit sensational, but really, this is a story of womanhood. And I want to see more three-dimensional stories of womanhood like this. Yes, I will caveat, these characters are privileged. So it is a section of motherhood. It is a section of being a woman. So yes, you can acknowledge that with also it being a really good and shockingly universal story for many, many people. I just, please give it a chance. There are highly imperfect things about it. I will absolutely acknowledge that, but I really connected with this film and I want other people to give it a chance. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. The next film I have, I did not see at TIFF. However, it was playing there, and I heard great things, and I'm so glad that I listened to those great things. It is called Flow, and it is an animated film. It has no dialogue. And I know that also, much like the name of Nightbitch, might turn some people off, but please stick with me here. So Flow centers around a cat, and there's a huge flood, and the cat has to navigate and survive the world that they are left in afterwards. And this movie, I'm not a cat person. I happen to be allergic to like all animals, and so I don't have a one-to-one relationship with pets, so I don't have that like extra connection there. But from the get-go, I was like, oh no, I am so invested in what happens to this poor cat, like what is going on. The animals, even though they do not speak, are characters. And they did such a good job of just not anthropomorphizing them, because I think there's a world in which that actually would have cheapened this story, but they do such a good job of just conveying like through actual animal behavior and realistic to a degree, because this is a kind of fantastical world they live in, just in terms of like the geography, etc. It's not the earth we live in, but these are like earthly creatures. They just like the relationships between them. Like, yes, this feels like an animal, but I also can map a story onto this, and I didn't need a line of dialogue. And I think it is such impressive storytelling. The visual style of this is really gorgeous. It's lit really well, which I know is a dorky thing to talk about, but like the animals are stylized, but also kind of realistic. They don't have like fur simulation on them, but you can feel where the fur is built into the rig. They use the lighting in a really clever way. I was so enamored of this film. You can't do this in live action. If you can't do this in like photoreal CG, because I think it would aggressively cheapen it. It's just a really great story, and you will, from the get-go, you will become obsessed with this cat. So Flow, there are a couple parts where it dips into like a kind of strange thing, and I was like, I'm going to be along for the ride because you've done such a good job with everything else. I'm going to give this a 4.8 out of 5. The next film I have is called Y2K, and it is from director Kyle Mooney, and he co-wrote it with Evan Winter, and this was a really strange one for me. So I lived through Y2K. I have distinct memories of it, and if you are not aware, Y2K is the turn of 2000, and everyone was afraid that there was going to be the computers couldn't handle the 0000 thing and the world's going to collapse. So one going into this movie, I didn't realize that this is, and I don't think this is a spoiler, I didn't watch the trailer, this is my bad. I thought this was just going to be about like the night of 1999 to 2000. No, this is about a world in which that actually does happen, and the computers do uprise, and like the singularity effectively happens. So I was very surprised when that came around. But, you know, as somebody who lived through it, there are such specific things in this that I was like, oh man, I have been taken back in time, but I've also been made to feel 1,000 years old because this film stars a bunch of people who were probably not even born yet. I know definitely a bunch of them weren't even born yet. As Jaden Martell, Rachel Zegler, Julian Dennison, Lachlan Watson, The Kid Leroy, Eduardo Franco, and then it also has Fred Durst, which will make sense once you see the film. But yes, Fred Durst as Fred Durst. Not a spoiler, he's in a lot of the marketing. So going into this film and not knowing that it is about the kind of, you know, apocalypse effectively that would have happened, I was very surprised when that happened. It is a much kind of grosser film in some of those senses in terms of like a little more slasher horror than I was expecting. I thought this was gonna be like a slapsticky comedy. If I'm being very upfront, I think I was expecting Superbad, but on Y2K. And so that's on me, I guess, but I would like to help other people contextualize this film, because if you are going into it being like, yes, you know, this is just gonna be a nostalgic film, it's nostalgic with a hardcore twist. The other thing I will say about this movie is, if you are a person who enjoys psychedelics, I am not speaking from personal experience here, but if you are, this seems like this is exactly made for you. And there are a lot of characters in this who enjoy, you know, things that grow in the ground. It might also turn into a nightmare for you because of that, because of the kind of thematic elements I mentioned. But again, not expecting some of that. I think maybe I was expecting more of that type of humor and sensibility, given that it is Kyle Mooney, and not to say psychedelic, but just like surrealist. But yeah, if you enjoy those things and are in an emotional place where you can handle this, you're going to have such a good time at this film. If you are on the fence about this film, I actually don't know if this is one where I'm going to be like, yeah, go for it, just because it's very unique. And it's very, I'm trying to be really nice here. It's very unique, and I think they are speaking to their own comedic sensibilities, and I have to say, like, those are not going to jive with everyone. If you like Kyle Mooney's work, and I'm not talking about his Saturday Night Live work, if you like a Brigsby Bear, I think is probably a good example, or his work on YouTube, like, this is up your alley. If you are like, I know that guy from SNL and all this other stuff, and you're like, I know Rachel Zegler from West Side Story and all those things, I'm like, no, this is very different than all of those. And then finally, if you are like me, again, and have very distinct memories of the actual experience of Y2K, this will make you feel old. So all of those things to help contextualize your experience. I had a good time watching this, but I think I was also ready to embrace the surrealism and all this stuff without even knowing about the kind of like grosser, scarier question mark factors. But I very much acknowledge it's not for everyone. And again, it wasn't what I was expecting, a little bit my own fault, but I'm going to give this a 3.3 out of 5 with that additional caveat that if you are really a Kyle Mooney fan, like this is a 5 out of 5 for you. The last film I have this week is another animated film. It's called That Christmas, and it is out already on Netflix, and it is adapted from a series of Richard Curtis books. And if you're not familiar, Richard Curtis is the man who brought us Love Actually, which is truly one of my favorite films, honestly. Also Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, etc. And this is a very Richard Curtis story in that it's multi-threaded. You know, there's a bunch of different characters. The biggest difference, well, I mean, aside from that it's animated, between this and something like Love Actually, which I think is going to be the most obvious comparison, is that it is centered around kids. So this is a very kid and family friendly one. And that's not to say that Love Actually isn't, although there are a lot of plot lines in it, you know, like the entirety of Martin Freeman's storyline in Love Actually, you know, not the most kid friendly part if you think back to it. But so this is very family friendly, which, good news, it's on Netflix, so you can watch it with the family at home. So if you're expecting like Love Actually level investment, it's not quite that, but I thought it was a cute and kind of frenetic story. I am not someone who celebrates Christmas, so in that sense, I didn't connect to it as much, but I do think that if you are someone who does, and you, especially if you have a family and little kids, like this is going to be a really cute thing to watch around Christmas time. It's already out, obviously, but it's directed by Simon Otto, who was a DreamWorks veteran. He worked on done the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, just a really great animator and storyteller as well. So combining him with Richard Curtis, I think, was a really smart idea. But again, I will caveat, this is a little more youth-friendly than I think some people were expecting. It is also very saccharine at the end, which is what we like out of a Richard Curtis story. But I think because it is, you know, featuring more young characters, there's a little less of the edge that also comes with it. So I just want to warn you about that. But very sweet. If you like this type of thing, no reason not to watch it. I'm going to give it a 3.7 out of 5.